think grief is something we carry for the rest of our lives in different ways, and it shapes us and molds us. My biggest grief is definitely the loss of my marriage.
Well, a lot of people don't recognize in their daily lives that what they're really dealing with is unprocessed grief. And it's coming out, it smells, right? It may be in performance, it may be in a mood disorder, it may be in reactivity, it may be in difficulty in getting close to someone.
There are times where, for my grief, where I would feel like, why am I not done with this yet? I'm ready to be done. I thought I talked about it all and felt it all. And then you go, oh no, this is still just in me. This is still just happening. I can't control the speed of this. I have to just ride this ride.
You can't control the speed. Well, grief doesn't have a set timeline. It's not like you get frozen vegetables and there's a use-by date. But grief has a process it has to go through. You can drag that process on for years by not entering into the process.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Paula Ferris Show. I'm your host, Paula, and we just wrapped an entire series last month on perimenopause, looking at it from a lot of different angles. I had my good friends, Dr. Jen Ashton and Artie Sequeira on. If you have not listened to that series, they are quick, digestible episodes. I encourage you to go back and listen and share with anybody in your life that might be going through perimenopause. It starts as early as mid-30s. Every woman is going to go through it. So I highly encourage you to go back and listen to the entire series. I feel like everybody in my life is going through perimenopause, but maybe that's just the algorithm. So this month, I wanted to launch a series on grief and loss. And look, you look at your life, all of us have lost something in some capacity. Maybe we lost a loved one. Maybe we lost a dream. We lost a job. We lost a relationship or a marriage. Not only is loss inevitable, but grieving that loss is necessary. The impetus for doing this series is, I have shared with you, I have felt rudderless. I have been completely knocked off my feet since the loss of my mother earlier this year. And I don't know what to do with that grief. I don't know how to grieve. I don't know when to grieve. I don't know how to process it. Will I ever be the same? So what I wanted to do with this series is invite my good friend, Dr. Henry Cloud. He's a renowned psychologist, the author of a myriad of New York Times bestselling books. He is going to guide us all month long on grief as a therapist. And I have invited two of my friends, Annie F. Downs, the podcaster and author, and Jessica N. Turner, also an author. And we're all going to be sharing our stories of loss and grief all month long. I titled this episode Good Grief because grieving is necessary. Now, these are going to be quick episodes. We're going to be looking at grief from a lot of different angles, why it's necessary to grieve, what happens when we don't grieve, how, when to grieve, what to do with the grief. Are we ever the same after loss? And do we ever stop grieving? And not only that, but giving ourselves permission to dream after loss and through the grief. So I've asked you to share your very real stories of grief and loss, and I will be sharing those after today's conversation. I'll also be talking about them in my personal newsletter. If you're not signed up, it goes out every couple of weeks at paulaferrisofficial.com. But Dr. Henry Cloud, Jessica N. Turner, Annie F. Downs all month long on Good Grief. And we're kicking it off with episode 1, why grieving our losses is necessary and what happens when we don't. So Jessica N. Turner, Annie F. Downs, Dr. Henry Cloud, thank you so much for joining me for this month-long series on grief and loss. First of all, Dr. Henry Cloud, do you want us to refer to you as Dr. Cloud or Henry? What are you most comfortable with?
I don't care.
Okay. Ladies, what should we call him?
I think Henry. I think we're going to be getting into it.
I agree.
So I feel
okay.
good about that.
There's no telling what you might be calling me by the way.
By the time we're done.
Thank you guys for doing this. I have shared with you my story of grief and loss, and I can't even get through it from the beginning. I think I'm probably the most raw in my grief. And Dr. Henry Cloud, Henry and I are friends. Every time I look at you, I feel like I'm going to cry. I lost my mom in February. So what I'd love for us to do right at the beginning, Jessica and Annie, let's just talk about the things that we've lost, the things that we're grieving. I can go first, but probably on the surface is losing my mom in February. And I lost my dad 6 years ago. So already, I'm sorry, guys. It's very raw and real for me. But, I have friends that are dealing with loss of their own, loss of a job, loss of a dream. A family member couldn't ever have kids, biological kids of her own. A friend that just moved cross country and is really struggling with the loss of her life and what it looked like. So loss, it can look like a lot of different things. For me, I'm grieving my mother, and especially my mother. And I'm also, I don't know if I've ever grieved the loss of kind of my job and TV career, that ended very abruptly during the pandemic when I stepped away from ABC and we blew up our lives and everything we knew and moved to a small town in South Carolina. Never had any closure. I never had a chance to go back and pack my house up and sell it. Never had a chance to go back to my office at ABC.
I'll never forget that part of your story.
They shipped me everything. So that's a little bit, I would say, on the outside. I'm still dealing with that, and I think I'm still grieving that loss. But the loss of my mother has rocked my world. So what about you, Jessica? You want to tell us your grief and loss story and journey?
Yeah. During the pandemic, my ex-husband came out to me, and we'd been married 16 years, 3 kids. I had no idea he was gay, and it was really a 1.5 year long journey. But in June of 2020, he moved out. We're still great friends. He lives down the street. But as you can imagine, there is tremendous grief. There's always grief in divorce, but I think that additional layer of him keeping this big secret from me was a lot. And I really went through a journey over the past 5 years of finding myself. I was married really young and came to understand grief in a different way. I think I had always equated grief with the grief that you're describing of losing your mom. And my eyes really became open to the idea of we all are walking around with grief stories. There are pieces of our stories that are disappointment, that there's no other way to describe it, but I thought it would be one way and it's another way. And that's something that I've grieved and walked through. I think grief is something we carry for the rest of our lives in different ways, and it shapes us and molds us. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But my biggest grief is definitely the loss of my marriage.
And Annie, what about you? And Jessica, we will talk about your book. I thought it would be better than this. And Annie, you wrote a book about losing your nephew called Where Did TJ Go? Tell us a little bit about the loss and grief that you've experienced in your own life. Maybe something
so that feels like the most profound. Like you said, I think you're so right, Jess, that there's grief all the time. It feels like the older you get, the more you realize it's piles of grief. But for me, I'm the oldest of 3 daughters in our family. My middle sister is the only one who's married. And she and her husband got pregnant in 2021. And pretty early, we found out that the baby was sick and diagnosed with trisomy 18, which is a life-limiting diagnosis. And so her whole pregnancy, we as a family and the people they invited in knew that unless God did a miracle, the miracle we wanted, this baby would not live. But everywhere she went, people were asking her, when are you due? And is it a boy or a girl? She was constantly dealing with everyone else's hope in the midst of her own grief. And then his name is TJ. He was born in June of 22. And most trisomy 18 babies don't come home from the hospital. They don't make it if they even get to birth. But the kindness of God and medical intervention, TJ lived 56 days. So he died in August of 22. And so that was by far our family's most profound and my most profound grief and loss.
Anything else that you've been walking through? Any other loss?
Oh man. I'm not married. So I've had a lot of breakups that all the hope dies with each of them. Yeah. I think Jess is right.
Sometimes the relief enters in.
Yeah.
When you're dating, you kick one to the curb.
That's right. That's exactly right. They're not all bad. That's exactly right. Sometimes, every one of them's a rescue, but sometimes it's more profound than others. I'll tell you a thing about my personality that you know profoundly, Paula. I do not enjoy being sad. It is
I'm
not.
With you. Conceal, don't feel.
Yeah. And so when you say, what other grief have you had? I'm like, well, my counselor and I have worked through all of them the last 12 years, but I don't tend to keep thinking about them.
Yep.
And so breakups fit in that category. Life not going the way I thought it would. I was living part-time in Nashville and part-time in New York, and I'm done living in New York for the time being. And so there's some grief to that of packing up that place. But by far and away, TJ's the greatest grief that I've experienced.
So Henry, I want you've heard all of our stories, and I think loss looks so different for so many of us, but tell us why it's important to grieve, why it's necessary to grieve. I think throughout my life, and I don't know about you, Jessica and Annie, I conceal, don't feel, I move on. I want to read to you something that Henry texted me because we've been going back and forth. And you said, Henry, when you just move on, you tend to drag a U-Haul trailer behind you that carries everything that you don't want in the car. It slows you down, makes you drive in a swervy way, and it keeps you from hitting your top speed. So pull over into a rest, stop, clean it out, let go of some of the crappy stuff in that U-Haul, and you'll surprisingly also find some treasure that's packed in there as well.
I said that?
You said that. Yes, you did. So profound. So tell us, why is it necessary to grieve?
Well, think about this for a second. Everybody's got a sink, right? And after dinner, you dump stuff into the sink for the garbage disposal.
Right.
Well, what if you did that, and you had a big meal and you did that and you never turned it on? What's it going to do? It's going to sit there.
It's going to smell.
And it's going to start to smell. And so we are designed, our brains, we have a limbic system where our emotional stuff lives, and we have a whole nother system of the brain where all of that is processed and it's understood and it adds meaning. And another big deal is it adds time. So the other part of the brain adds sequencing. So if it's stuck in the emotional brain, then all those things don't happen. The reason why sometimes you can't let go in grief is because it's not connected to time, because it hasn't moved through all the areas of the brain. And so really what you're doing is you're walking around with something that's got a deep effect in every part of you, your heart, your mind, your soul, your body, and it can come out in a lot of different ways. That's when a lot of people don't recognize in their daily lives that what they're really dealing with is unprocessed grief. And it's coming out, it smells, right? It may be in performance, it may be in a mood disorder, it may be in reactivity, it may be in difficulty in getting close to someone. A lot of what we call commitment phobia is somebody dates, they fall in love and everything's great. The closer they get, seen this 1,000 times, they kind of start to shut down and sort of lose interest for whatever reason. That can be a defense against getting close, is opening up my heart. If I open up my heart, now I'm into all that stuff out of the process, so I move away. It can be 1,000 different things, but it's the basic why it's important is your system is designed to flush out that which we don't need and keep what we do. It's just like food. You go through, you eat a meal, you metabolize it, and your body breaks it down. It keeps the nutrients from it, and the other goes out in waste, right? Well, life, we ingest experience. So when you take in an experience, it's got to be metabolized.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you take from that good things. I mean, every bad thing we go through, we learn something, it turns into wisdom. It gets morphed into memories instead of pain that we cherish, but not if it's not metabolized. It's really important.
About 6 weeks, maybe 2 months after TJ died, my manager, and I didn't take off a day of work. He died that morning. I was in a meeting at 11 a.m. and I was just like, we're going to keep going. I got a book I had to release a book in the middle of his life.
Gosh.
And so at the end, again, 2 months maybe later, I'd been doing my job and just like put my head down and like crying at home and working here. And my manager pulls me in her office and she says, I don't think we're experiencing you the way you think we're experiencing you. She said, you think you're doing a great job and you're normal and you are really hard to work with. And I had no idea.
What a gift.
I know. That's what I said. I was like, that's why 3 years later, it's still so profoundly and a profound story for me, is because I was trying to not metabolize it, thinking everybody will be fine. We got to work. We got stuff to do. And them saying, this is the outside version is not what the inside version thinks it is. And it helped me a lot.
Annie, do you think that's something specific to you? Just like move on, turn the page? Or do you think that there's just a societal expectation that we're supposed to move on and grief has a limited time frame? Like, oh, it's been a month, it's been 3 months, it's time to move on. Do you think that's you? Is it nature, nurture? Is it society?
It can be either. I mean, some people are, they don't like weakness.
Yeah.
And grief, by definition, is you must embrace your weakness because you are weak. You can't hold on to that anymore. You can't make somebody come back, right? Some people don't like weakness and powerlessness, and they deal with every problem by moving on. But some people do the opposite, and they'll stay in it in a way that keeps them stuck for a long time.
What do you mean by that? They'll stay in it. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'll give you an example. I saw a friend from high school, not too long ago and was just sort of catching up on her life and the family's life. And her parents went through a divorce when we were teenagers. And I remember that. And I said, well, how are your mom and dad? And she said, well, Dad's doing great. You know, he moved on and, you know, blah, blah, blah. He's remarried and on and on. And then she changed her look. She said, but Mom's just stuck. And this is however many decades later.
Wow.
She's still stuck in the divorce. And she's got bad health and she's bitter, and all she does is talk about how he left the family. And so you can stay stuck in it. And that's why it's really important to deal with this.
All right, you guys, you've been hearing me sing the praises of my Cozy Earth sheets for some time now. And I've got one question for you if you haven't purchased a set yet. What are you waiting for? My Cozy Earth sheets, literally the only thing that's keeping me cool at night. I don't totally understand the science behind these sheets, but I know they work. They're made from bamboo, so they are going to naturally wick away the heat and moisture from your body, and that helps you sleep several degrees cooler. Plus, they have a 100-night sleep trial. Try them out. If you don't love them, return them hassle-free, but trust me, you're going to want to keep them, and they have a 10-year warranty. You can go to CozyEarth.com, use my code Paula for up to 20% off. Again, go to CozyEarth.com, use my code Paula, Paula, for up to 20% off. Because home isn't just where you live, it's how you feel. Let's go home with Cozy Earth and sleep cooler.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned in my grief was learning how to listen to my body and pay attention to it. So much so that in my body has kind of become vernacular that I use and just constantly aware of how is this feeling? What is this bringing up? Paying attention and noticing. Mm-hmm. And I think particularly for women, which is who I mostly speak to, we cultivate. I can't speak for men. You can tell me if this is true in your experience, Henry, but in my experience, women, we want to cultivate this air of having it all together. Mm-hmm. And so like you, Annie, I remember from 2019 till Matthew moved out, I was online every day. I'm an influencer. I had to do a job. I was showing up for my day job and I thought I was fine, but I was dying inside. I was crying any chance I could to be by myself. And now I look at pictures from that time and I was like, oh my gosh, you can totally see in my eyes, there's no light there. I'm so sad. Even if I'm smiling, I'm so sad. Mm-hmm. And I think that paying attention to what our body is telling us can help move us through or cause us to stay and pay attention. Why am I feeling this way? What is this bringing up? So that we can do what you're saying of kind of cleaning up and cleaning out, right? Oh, why is that? I guess I haven't paid attention to that. Why am I feeling that way? I guess that is still something that's unresolved. I need to work on that. Even though I think I'm healed, I actually still have something here because this is bringing this up in my body.
The body thing is hugely important because your body doesn't really care about what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Your body will reflect what is. And earlier I talked about the emotional system and the wiring that's so connected to so many glandular. It's very complicated, but your body will tell you. You've all heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
Your body will tell you, and a lot of times that's why I remember a patient I had one time where she did not want to face some stuff, and finally I got her to do some breathing stuff where I'd have her blow out as far as she could and then go. And when she got to the top of that breath, she would crack. I mean, just sob and sob and sob because her body had to do its work.
Yeah.
And it'll tell you.
It'll tell you. Yeah. And when you become attuned to it, I feel like then I just have started leaning in, and now I'm just so acutely aware of when feelings come up, of not pushing them aside. I want to get that trash out as quickly as possible so that I can keep getting better and be better, not only just for myself, but for my kids, for my community, for the people that I love.
Well, you mentioned that, as a clinician, I rarely care what people are saying to me because I can see what's really going on. Your coworkers saw it.
Yes.
And so a lot of times what you think you're thinking about this, your body, your expressions, your tones, your posture, You start talking about a certain topic and somebody starts, your body will talk to you.
Mm-hmm. I think too, and I don't know I think both of you described those initial first days of grief and what that looked like. I don't like to cry, right? I'm not a crier. It feels very vulnerable to me. It feels weak. I'm an Enneagram 8, so I'm like, let's move on. Conceal, don't feel. See, yes, it's tough. But those first couple days, I don't want to talk to anybody. And I just laid on the ground and cried, and I was in shock. And
can we get back to you don't want to talk to anybody?
I didn't want to talk to anybody. Yeah. And I don't know if that's healthy, but I mean, I just feel like since Mom died, and again, Dad died February of 2019. Mom died almost 6 years to the day. So Valentine's weekend, Valentine's Day is the 14th. Dad died the 15th. Mom died the 16th. Their anniversary is on the 19th. So, but I just don't feel like I've been myself. I feel like I've lost such a huge part of myself. And I know we're going to get into that a little bit later in the series of Are We Ever the Same After Grief? I don't know if maybe I'm in perimenopause and I'm so hormonal. I don't know if it's the grief that's doing it to me, but probably 2 months ago, I mean, probably the biggest fight that my husband and I have ever been in. My kids were involved too, not physical fight, but we were just arguing. And they almost had to have an intervention with me because they're like, you're not yourself anymore. And I think grief is it's done a number on me. I don't feel like I'm myself. And I almost feel like if I try to heal those parts that I'm forgetting my mom, and I don't know. So again, this feels super uncomfortable for me, but it's just rocked my world. I've never felt like this my whole life. And I don't know if it is the perimenopause or it's the grief, but I don't know what to do with it. And I know we're going to get into that too, but they
work together, whether it's menopause or some other physical condition. That's really your body's the equipment with which you grieve, part of it. So if the equipment's going through its own stuff, the equipment's broken. So I can see why that would make it more difficult.
Like from a physiological standpoint, though, when we continue to just move on and we don't deal with it, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but like what happens when we don't give ourselves the time and space, whatever that looks like, to grieve? And again, it's not like it's linear, that it has an end point. I think grief can last a lifetime too, but what happens when we don't give ourselves that permission to grieve? What happens to our bodies?
Can I tell a personal example?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, in 2008, my mother died, and then my father died weeks later. And then 5 days after my father died, my brother-in-law, who was a Navy SEAL, was killed in Iraq. I mean, it all happened at once. And also, if you remember, in 2008 was the financial meltdown. I worked in leadership, a lot of work on Wall Street, and the world was crashing. And so, I had family to take care of, and all of that work was bombarding me. And I never stopped. And really a lot of stuff with taking care of family. Never stopped. So I went through it, worked that whole year. It was a horrible year, as you recall. The next February or March, I'm speaking to an arena, something I've done 1,000 times, 25,000 women. And I get up on the stage and I start talking, and the arena starts spinning like I'm on a merry-go-round. I mean, literally spinning. And I start to feel like panicky. And thankfully, I'm a psychologist, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm having a panic attack. I've never had a panic attack. This is a panic. Now, the whole while I'm talking, right? And so somehow I keep talking, and I managed to get through this. And then I sit down and go, what the heck is wrong with me? And I thought, well, I flew in at 2 a.m, had to get up at 6, didn't eat yesterday because of the flights. I got a blood sugar low. I'll get some sleep. I'm fine. It was on a tour. The next week, same thing happened. And I said, crap, this is not going away. Mm-hmm. But it will. So the next week, it happened again. And I was going, what in the world? This is a year later.
Wow.
From all this. I didn't even put it together. And then I said, wait a minute, maybe it has something to do with, and then I realized I never really processed any of that. So I called a good shrink and went in and had to unpack it. And I spoken 10,000 times since, but it took a while and it went away.
But you had to address it.
Had to address it.
Time is such a gift in all of this, though, right? Because I think our bodies know what we can handle when we can handle it. And I just think I have to live on the reminder God is not working on a short timeline. He's working on a long one.
Yes.
And so, because there are times where for my grief, especially with TJ, where I would feel like you said, like, why am I not done with this yet? I'm ready to be done. I thought I talked about it all and felt it all. And then you go, oh no, this is still just in me. This is still just happening. I can't control the speed of this. I have to just ride this ride.
You can't control the speed,
No.
but you can control things that will control the speed. And that's the difference.
What is that? What can you control that will control the speed?
Well, grief doesn't have a set timeline. It's not like you get frozen vegetables and there's a use-by date. But grief has a process it has to go through. Now, you can drag that process on for years by not entering into the process. So you've heard the old saying, time heals all things. Well, tell that to an infected tooth.
Yeah.
Time plus the right work heals all things. And so we can't just, first of all, we can't say, well, it's been so and so and so and so long. I should be over this. You can't say that. And you can't say, well, time will take care of this.
And I think, Paul, I want to say this. I know we're getting close to the end of this conversation, but I really think that your healing is honoring your mom. And so I think it's actually the opposite, that as you heal, it's not like you're ever going to forget her or forget who she is in your life and the impact that she's had over your life and will continue to have. But you doing this work of healing and noticing and listening to your body and carrying her memory is actually honoring to her, and I think will have a profound impact on you in a really positive way.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I actually have tattoos of my parents' handwriting. I don't know if you guys can see it. It says Paula Rosie. My mom's handwriting is on the top and my dad's is on the bottom. So they both called me Paula Rosie. And this is just really special for me. I took cards. Yes, I'm a conceal, don't feel hard Enneagram 8, but I'm somewhat nostalgic. And so I've kept greeting cards from my parents over the years. And I took the greeting cards into a tattoo artist and she replicated their handwriting. So every time, I look down on my wrist, I can see I can feel them. I can hear them saying my name because my name's Paula Rose, but they always call me Paula Rosie. So that's, a way that I could honor them too. But I think that's a good place to end. We can pick up our next episode on that note. Henry, you said grief has a process. So I'd love to talk about that in the next episode. Anything you want to say before we sign off from this episode?
Well, we could put off talking about the process and just repeat this one for 5 years.
We see you.
Oh, me too, Henry. Oh, Henry's a joker too. A little jokester. All right, you guys, we'll pick it up in the next episode. So we're going to be continuing this conversation all month with Dr. Henry Cloud, Jessica N. Turner, and Annie F. Downs. So my takeaways in just a second, and I will be sharing one of your stories that you shared with me about your grief and loss. But as you could tell from that conversation, my grief is still really, really raw. It's hard for me to even talk about my loss. And you may be feeling the same without completely breaking down. But I will say, even just talking about it, as Dr. Cloud said, we have to metabolize it. We have to flush it from our system. I felt a physiological difference just in talking about it with trusted friends, just in that episode alone. So my takeaways, number one, it impacts all of you, your entire body, your entire being, if you do not grieve. Dr. Cloud said you're walking around with something that has a huge impact on your mind, your body, and your spirit, and you have to metabolize it. He said that's what a lot of people don't recognize in their daily life. Maybe they're dealing with unprocessed grief and it's manifesting. He says it doesn't smell right. It may manifest in your performance. It may manifest in a mood disorder or disaster. It may be in your reactivity, but your system, he said, is designed to flush it out. Flush out that which we don't need and keep what we do. So again, number one, it impacts us when we don't grieve. Number two, our body has to do the work. He said grief by definition is weakness, but you just have to process it. Your body has to do the work. He shared that story about his patient. He said she didn't want to face a lot of the stuff that she had dealt with. She had some some breathing issues, and he worked on that. He said he had her blow out as far as she could. And then when she got to the top of that breath, he said she would just sob. The body has to do the work, but don't get stuck in your grief. He says when you get stuck in your grief, that is not healthy. Number 3, grief doesn't have a timeline, but grief does have a process. He said it's not like you get frozen vegetables and there's a use-by date. Grief has a process it has to go through, and then that process can drag on for years, but you have to enter into that process. So again, grief doesn't have a timeline, but it does have a process. Okay, so I want to read a very personal story that one of you shared with me. Lisa sent this to me on Instagram. It is her story of grief and loss. And I will modify it just to protect her identity a little bit, but here's Lisa's story. Lisa writes, I lost my first husband, the father of my kids, 16 years ago to cancer. He was 33. Grief is so hard, and no one wants to talk about it. It feels heavy, hopeless, and it feels like everyone else moves on without you. There is an expectation in our society, even in religious circles, that we can grieve for a year, and after that, we have to have our lives back together. It's spoken, it's implied, it's expected, and you're stuck if you grieve after that. But that is such a disservice to the grieving and what we've lost. Grief ebbs and flows. It's never linear. Lisa writes, my grief story is still going. My hardest year was year 4, not year 1. It's been 16 years since my husband passed, she writes, and I miss him every day. But I'm now remarried to a wonderful man, coming up on our 9th anniversary, and he is the most patient, understanding, and loving man. He encourages us to keep my late husband's memory alive, and he never feels threatened by what I had. He loves my kids as his own, and I'm so thankful. He is such a gift. Thank you for doing this series. Lisa, thank you for sharing your story, and all month long, I will be sharing your very real stories of grief and loss because, again, loss is inevitable and grieving is necessary. With that, it's time to sign off from episode 1 of our month-long series on good grief. Coming up next week, we're going to be talking about when to grieve, how to grieve, what to do with the grief. Also, I have to admit something. I have been stuck in an anger and shame spiral since Mom passed. So we're going to be diving into all of that next week and why you cannot grieve on your own. You need people around you to help you grieve. That's all coming up next week as we continue to talk about it. And again, thank you for sharing your stories of grief and loss. You're not alone. We're going to get through it, and we're going to keep talking about it. I'll see you then. I know you guys thought you were done with me, but not quite yet. I have one more thing to tell you about. If you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to subscribe to the show. I don't want you to miss a single beat or a single conversation. And remember, my DMs are always open. Tell me what you want to talk about.